Okay, so welcome and good morning. Thank you for being here. And welcome to the crisis. So a bit about that later on. 2005, the Vatican. This is when the Pope was announced. What's interesting about this photograph is it really shows you at the time a commonality of behavior. Take a look at the bottom corner and you'll notice a flip phone. Some of you in this room may have never bought a flip phone. You can't actually see it, can you? So that's an epic fail already. There we go. Wow. Can I just start over again? Anyway, there's a flip phone in this photo. More importantly, if you sort of fast forward to 2013 and you look at the next announcement, the same place, that's a pretty big demonstration of the change that we're going through as human beings. Devices, mobility, content. Think about that change. That's a short amount of time for a dramatic change. The key to that change is that change presents a lot of opportunity, but also a lot of risk. And that's where we sit today, is as marketers, we all sit in the same exact set of risk and opportunity, and there's a massive change going on. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't even realize it. My name's Simon O'Day. I've been working in Melbourne since 1999 in digital and data and email. And I've been working around this sort of change for a long time. And one easy way to encapsulate that is, raise your hand if you are part of a loyalty program in Australia. Flybys, Qantas, Virgin, gotta love these loyalty programs. Think about the amount of print material you get every single week, every single month, every single year from those loyalty programs. It's minimal. Now let's roll back to 2001, 2002. 2001, 2002, it was all print. Until suddenly one day, someone decided, let's turn that off. Now I was working in email at the time, and we saw that coming. And we probably weren't as aware of the repercussions, but those people working in print didn't see it coming, either had their heads in the sand, or just didn't believe that the future was changing around them. Millions of dollars. They were running scared at that point. And so print houses closed and direct marketing shifted dramatically. That was a fundamental change of its time. It was massive at the time. We're now in a totally different era. And yet we're getting ready to enter into another one as well. So this era that we're in today really does have two key ingredients. And one of those ingredients is really akin to maybe what your parents or what your grandparents have talked about. This idea of going to your local baker, your local shop, your local cafe, and they know who you are. They know all about you. You walk in and they know their customers like family almost. And you may have that today. I live in Gardenvale where my family's been for generations, and there's a baker there that my grandmother went to. There's a cafe there that I go to. I was just there 2 days ago, and I had a smile on my face because I sat down, I turned around, and my coffee was being brought to me. I didn't even ask him. I mean, how good does that feel? The power of those relationships, the power of those are successful businesses. So relationships are one of the key ingredients to our past, to our future, and to our success as marketers and as businesses. But there's no scale. So to get scale is a critical ingredient as well. But the unfortunate thing is, as we went into mass media, if you were a small business or you're generationally working your way forward and you went into wanting to really become a large business or be very successful, mass media really was the way to do that. When you think about billboards, you think about TV and radio and print. And these were all very successful mediums for the times. But when you look at that, you lose that relationship because you're going for scale, you're going for product. And you think about scale, and the digital age, even with IKEA, even with, you think about where they're trying to rebuild that Ferris wheel for the second time. A week doesn't go by that someone doesn't say to me, hey, you lived in America most of your life. Have you been to Costco? Have you seen, you can buy TVs, you can buy bulk toilet paper. It's fantastic. And IKEA is the same, and so on and so on. Yeah, there's no relationship there. That's just product and scale and success. It leaves the relationship behind. Even with the digital era where you've got email and you've got display and you've got mobile and you've got all these devices and you've got segmentation and dynamic content, all these fantastic tools, it's not the same. And there's a key reason for it not being the same. The reason is because we're still doing things the same way as we did in mass media when we tried to scale. If you think about those two ingredients, scale and relationship, the crisis that we're in, now it's not global warming. I don't want to say that I'm sitting here telling you you're all going to die, but the crisis we're in as marketers is that we're doing things the same way. We're using the same methodologies and we're using the same approaches. What does that look like? Well, what it looks like is you get a brief, you go forward with that brief, you select your list, you select your channel, you select your content, you get it tested, you go live. Rinse and repeat. Start, finish. Over and over again. 80 to 90% of marketers are doing this every single day, and it is leading us nowhere. And just to show this, the last 5-6 years, campaigns have increased dramatically. There's an article in the paper today about Telstra, triumphantly saying we have doubled the amount of campaigns that we do for like 3,000 campaigns for a year. Now the revenue goes up initially. There's a great example of an airline here that just drove campaigns up, revenue going up and up. The problem is that you end up at a point of disengagement with your customer. Because it's not about you shouting, it's not about the marketers shouting at the customers. Customers get disengaged. That point of disengagement is that crisis, because I'm sure there's a limp joke here somewhere, but the point is that crisis is where your revenue is going to drop. Your customers are disengaged. It's just not going to be successful in the long term. So you can hammer away. You can keep segmenting and keep sending out these individual campaigns all you want, but that's just shouting. That's not listening. That's shouting. Jamie Nordstrom is a big thought leader on this out of the States and globally in retail, and he says if by 2020 you're not shifting from a campaign-centric view away to a better way to do it, you're dead. And this is a major retailer. He's saying if you're not thinking about your customer and the way they behave and thinking about and listening to them more, you're dead. And when you look at the detail behind the research, the disengagement, the sort of turning off marketing is prevalent. You look at it across email. Email is the most powerful channel, and if you're not a believer in that, then you need to sit down and do some serious thinking. Email is the most powerful channel right now being used in marketing, and open rates and click-through rates are dropping every year. Display is the same. Dropping. Now, I say this as someone involved in the industry. This isn't a happy thing. I'm not sitting here saying this because I'm excited. This is the point I'm making about the crisis. Opportunity and risk. Massive opportunity because of the changes going on. Massive risk if you don't do something about it. It's as simple as this, though. You put the customer back in your marketing. McKenzie says it really well. Don't look at all of the work you're doing as all these campaigns that are individually managed. Look at all the interactions that a customer goes through when they work their way through a business, whether it's a welcome or whether it's a purchase or whether it's a retention, and bundle that all together. That one group is the journey that you've got to look at as a customer. It's not the campaigns. And so what do you do about it? You've got to flip the model. You've got to turn this thing inside out. And it's as simple as starting with that customer. It's as simple as saying, who is the customer? So go out and get my preference information. Go out and get not my opt-in to email only, but print and mobile. Get me to connect on Facebook so that you can get additional profile information. Put the customer, put that individual at the center. Learn more about the customer first. But that's just the beginning. The second part is plan out the journeys, plan out the life cycles, plan out the programs. And then the final bit about that is set it up to go live, and there's no start and end date. It's not a campaign like you're used to. It's a whole bunch of live listening events that just are sitting there ready for someone to behave. And the way they behave, they flow through the whole thing. Whole different way of working. So when you look at it from a mass market point of view and you think about the transaction, you think about the inevitability of sort of 3% uptake, 97% of people just disengaged. You flip that and you start targeting at a higher level using relationships and building profiles, and you get a sort of 3 times higher rate already. You build these lifecycle programs out and automate them and use interactions instead of campaigns. And you can really go even higher. You can get up to sort of 5 or 10 times. But the way that looks in your business and when you're a marketer and you're doing planning, the way that looks is you've really got to map out all the different ways to engage. And that can be the hard bit to get your head around. So really it's, most of the time it's about looking at companies that do this and thinking about how that relates back to yourselves. And the first one I'll talk about is just a story because it's an entire industry, and that's the rental car industry. It's a great story. And some of what's going on in the world is maybe a little bit ahead in the States, but I tend to disagree with people that say that Australia's behind or the UK's ahead, or it just doesn't matter. Everyone's doing great stuff everywhere. But in the rental car industry, the drop-off rate for a reservation to a purchase or to a rental is horrendous. It's a part of their business that just they can't seem to fix in a lot of ways. But there's been a few companies that have fixed it using this approach. What they've done is they've taken that entire life cycle, that event, that in the market moment, and they've overlaid a series of automated interactions for these consumers to flow through. And so what they've done is they've started off with, hey, you've reserved a car. Fantastic. That's hit a little trigger in the behavior, and they've set up a whole pathway that says, okay, you've reserved a car. We're immediately going to send you a message to say, thank you for reserving that car, by the way, maybe some cross-sell, upsell. That's not unique. That's a trigger. You can auto-respond. You can do that any number of ways. The point is that's the beginning. That's not even close to the end. They'll wait a little while. Did you open? Did you click? Did you upgrade? And they'll have pathways running off of that. If you didn't open, if you didn't click, they'll assume that you may actually be bullshit and you're not going to rent that car, because that's kind of the premise. And they'll start setting display advertising, unique display advertising events in banners where you're reading the news, where you're looking at sport, or God knows what else you're looking at online. And they'll put an offer in there, and it'll be top of mind. And then along the way, they might add some other messages up until the point where you've actually reserved the car. They may add push-pull for when you arrive, and you might want to just do get your car using your app and not even go to the desk. And they follow you all the way through the journey. There's one rental car company in the States, Budget Thrifty, that have reduced the amount of churn from reservations to pickup by 50% by putting an automated process in place that was not onerous to do. Now, another big one, Flybys. If you've had a Flybys card for the last decade, you really probably have a love-hate relationship because it's been a sort of a wild ride for them. But I would say they're in their glory days right now because from what I see and from what I know, they've really figured out how to use all their customer behavioral data to build a much more interactive relationship with the Flybys customers, with Kohl's, with product, with scale. You know, they brought it well together. Their welcome program has 7 distinct parts of the journey. And those 7 parts of that journey take you through a whole onboarding process where, using your behavior, using where you are in that journey, they're able to really engage well. And they've seen a massive change in their revenue models, in their customer lifetime value. And I've got to just, customer lifetime value is one of the keys to all of this. They also have a very unique situation. For those of you who are in the digital sort of email marketing side of things, who here has a welcome program that gets over 100% open rates? That's over 100%. People opening it more than once. I mean, typical open rates are 20 to 30%. Some of these programs are getting over 100% open rates, which means people are engaged to the point where they come back and go, what was that offer? I got to go back and show that to my husband or my wife. Jeans West, 2 people running the marketing here, using very, very efficient tools, not a big budget. And what they've done is they've decided during the initial stages of understanding who a customer is, let's get them to opt in beyond just email. Let's get them to get a mobile message. Let's get them print. The reason why is because they do some pretty sophisticated things with just those 2 people. They build programs that are quite interactive. And along the way, they recognize what a lot of people recognize is what do you do when you've got drop-off where you can't reach someone? Say you've got a repeat purchaser and you're really excited about keeping them in the loop and the emails are dead or you can't reach them in a channel. Well, what they do in this specific case is they use a text message to re-engage. Now, this isn't someone getting batch data together and having to set up a campaign for everyone who I haven't been able to engage with for the last 3 weeks and sending them out a message saying, sorry, can you update your details? This is all part of a flow of multiple interactions across time based on behavior. And it's automated. So, don't think this is just a whole ton of work ongoing. It's actually the opposite of business as usual. Finally, another good example from the insurance industry, just to give you an idea of flow. The insurance industry is always plagued with the cost it takes to get applications through from whether it's an agent or a call center model all the way through to getting someone actually signed up for insurance. And MetLife is a great example where you think about the way they start a program. Someone has gone to a website and they've expressed interest in applying for insurance, probably a massive drop-off rate. They've built an entire journey using Net Promoter Score as their guide over time to get this done. And so it's, I've signed up for a quote, I receive an email, looks great, might have some cross-sell, upsell, tells me about the process I'm going to go through. I might drop out of that. I might say, you know what, I don't really care about MetLife. Just like I'm an Amy person, I might not really care about Bupa. I like the girl on the Amy. But then they say, hey, opt into mobile because we want to use text messages or we want to use a push-pull app to track you all the way through your process. And then based on your behavior, you're getting the point hopefully, based on your behavior, they take you down a journey and they take you through something that's applicable for you and your behavior and your devices and the way you do things. And this has got time attached to it as well, don't forget. Timing is critical, whether it's setting up the initial times and testing them and optimizing, or whether it's just being able to react in real time. Waiting 24 hours sometimes is the death of a lot of these things. So getting this all part of a time-based process is critical. And so it keeps going for them. This is about a 7 or 8 stage. Their Net Promoter Scores have gone through the roof on this because the customers are all behaving the way they want to behave. They're not having this relationship with an agent that they didn't want to have anyway. So just knowing that I'm sort of rounding it out here on time, there's a couple of key things for you to think about as you go forward. And the first one's planning. And this isn't planning like maybe you in the room are sort of thinking it's planning. This is sitting down and working through all the different ways a customer goes through a business. So as marketers, as agency people, as small business people, as enterprise people, everyone's got the same challenge, which is figuring that out, sitting down and figuring out what that means. And a great example is Easy Buy in New Zealand is a fantastic retailer, catalog and online retailer. Edwina runs most of the marketing there. And she walks around with this folio, this big thick paper thing, and she walks into meetings with that. That's got all the customer life cycle journeys through her business, whether it's onboarding a new customer, whether it's a repeat purchase event, whether it's a retention event, whether it's a reacquisition, all the way through the business, all tied to revenue, all tied to outcomes, all tied to devices, so data, to channels. And that's the business. That's her new business model. And so some of those things don't exist. Blue sky everything, for sure. Go through it and think, what can we do? And then some of those things she's got to wait on. Because the critical part of that is that the tools are there. Whether you're a small business, whether we're working as agencies, or whether we're in a large organization, the tools to do this are there. And if anybody wants to talk to me about that separately, I can go through some. Because at the different levels, there are different options. But SaaS technology, cloud-based technology, they're all there for you. That's not an excuse anymore. And they're there for the marketers, not the IT departments, not that guy that you go like, hey, can you come over and fix this for me? Oh, 5 weeks? All right, great. Not that. Today, marketers on their own can do it. The challenge is the data. You can still do things today. You can do things instantaneously on response data or on simple data sets. But you really do, when you blue sky, got to think about, well, how do I get web behavior or shopping cart abandonment data into that customer profile? How do I get Facebook Connect data, that fantastic little bit of extra data on someone's personal attributes? How do I get purchase data, product data? How do I get ratings and reviews data, all against profile data, so I can start building these things out and using that in real time? That's the challenge. But that's just a hurdle you've got to overcome over time, and you've got to work towards it. So finally, you. Yeah, in the last sort of 15 years here, yeah, I think, and it's probably the same way everywhere. Yeah, there's a survey last year about this. The biggest gap is the leadership expertise in how to get this moving. Digital overall's got that as well, but if there is something holding even you back in the room, it might be your bosses. Who's here with their boss? Anybody? Look at your boss. So the point is, you got to, like, the bosses in the room have got to get how to get here, because there's a lot of really bright people wanting to get here. You in the room, whether you're a boss or whether you really want to be the boss, you've got to lead this. And it's shifting from this campaign mentality. It is a crisis because there's not enough people in marketing departments, there's not enough time, there's too many channels, there's too much data. This cannot continue to be a manual process. This cannot continue to be a campaign process. That's on that side. On the consumer side, on the customer side, they're disengaged. They don't want it. They don't want what you want. They don't want you shouting at them. They want you to listen. And I know it sounds kind of wanky to say that, but they do. And they're showing it because the research shows they're walking away from brands that don't get that. So when you go back today and you think about this, if you're in planning or if you're thinking about the customer in marketing, blue sky the flow. Just blue sky it. Sit down with other people in other channels. Sit down with people in other parts of the business and blue sky it. And then work from that to what you can do today versus 6 months and versus 12 months. And the final thing I'll leave you with is, my experience over the last 4 or 5 years is, the more you delay this, the larger the gap of opportunity revenue you're leaving on the table. Because this is new revenue and new growth. And so if you delay 6 months, you could be leaving a lot of money on the table. And so the quicker you start, even if you start small, like Paul Kelly says, big things will grow. Thank you.